Welcome back to Switch to Linux. So we've been doing a lot of updates this week. One of those was quite opportunistic. I'm working on the Ubuntu 16 computer. It gives me a pop-up, 1610's available. Would you like to download it? I said, why not? Now, Cinnamon on Linux Mint I was working with something, I could not get it to work. I tested it on Linux Mint 18. It worked flawlessly, so I went ahead and pushed that upgrade, quite intentional. And last night I had quite an accidental update happen. So I run a Linux Mint KDE primarily on my main desktop computer, which is where I'm recording this video now. And I always run my updates, and I looked and said, oh, there's a few more updates there than usual. But nobody ever told me it was doing a full-blown Pllasma update. So my KDE Pllasma updated from 5.6.5 to 5.8.4 yesterday. And I gotta say, overall, I am actually very impressed with the update. There were a few little hitches, a few little bugs I'm gonna tell you about. And so we're gonna kind of dive into here, hopefully get these in a reasonable order. So first, let me transition back to my desktop. It'll look mostly the same, what you've seen before, except I did change the background image. I really wanted something dark in here to flow with the bluish scheme that I had going, and I found this one online and just the online repositories, where you can actually come over and configure the desktop here. And if you do not like any of the pre-installed desktops that you have, you can hit Get New Wallpapers. It goes online, and it will find you some more wallpapers to deal with. So that's kind of what I did, and I downloaded several different wallpapers. A few of them looked kind of neat. One of them I was thinking of going with is this Jupiter one here. It gets nice balance going, pretty sweet. But really, I did kind of settle on liking this city theme here. I thought that was a very nice desktop to use, and so we're going to stick with this one for a little while. So some of the things that I had occurred right away that I had noticed. The first thing is I use my Windows key. Of course, it's a meta key, but for a person coming from the Windows system, used to that key and used to the shortcuts you can do, is so used to hitting that key and getting your pop-up menu here. Now, of course, KDE gives you 3 different menu options. You can go with this menu. You can go with a menu that looks more like almost like a Mac type menu. Or you can go with a third menu that I don't really care for because it's kind of old looking, so I don't have it on here. But you can actually right-click this, and you can go to the application launcher settings, and for anything that has a similarity to it, it will have the alternative availabilities, unless they took care of that. Let's see. Yeah, they might have gotten rid of that. They might have actually gotten rid of that, or I need to unlock the widgets first, which I'm not going to do right now. And no, in fact, that is what you need to do. I keep my widgets locked down. So here, right-click it, and you can see this alternatives now pops up. And this shows you the alternatives that you could do for this particular menu. So I'm going to keep my widgets locked down. I do that for a couple reasons. Number one, so things don't move around on my desktop, because I really like how my settings are. And number two is it allows me to come down here to the bottom and quickly, minimize all windows, which is kind of not working right now because I'm running on an extended desktop, which is what I don't usually do. And I haven't configured where that desktop is. I just kind of plugged it in so I could run OBS here a little bit more flawlessly. So anyway, when I first kicked this on, now to get this Windows key working under 5.6, you had to install KSuperKey. And so I thought KSuperKey was broken because I'd hit it and I wouldn't get my menu. You'd have to hit it and hold the button for about a second and then pull it up. Well, what's happened is in 5.8, you no longer need to use KSuperKey. You no longer have to install it anyway to get your system to work. So what KSuperKey does is it converts the Alt F1 shortcut, which is the menu on the Pllasma desktop, to open this up. So KSuperKey allowed the Windows meta key on a simple hit release to trigger Alt F1. So whatever's configured to Alt F1 works if you hit the Windows key. So that was initially buggy, and so I did a little bit of research and found that with the 5.8, you no longer need KSuperKey. So what I did is I actually just went into the home folder where that is loaded at. And what I did is I just renamed the KSuperKey directory to KSuperKey old, which should disable it from loading inside the system. So as soon as that happened, quick system restart, immediately this key works absolutely flawless. So I was very pleased to see that as a result. So now it's fixed without having to mess with anything extra there. So the next thing that I really noticed, I did some testing because I noticed some stability issues with Dolphin, particularly if you were going to external places, such as a FTP, loading an FTP into the File Explorer, or I actually encountered it just using a simple USB drive plugged into the computer. If you let it go for about a minute and you tried to use the USB eject button, the system would crash out on you. You'd have to force restart the computer or whatever else. And that seems to be fixed. The FTP server is now fixed. So if you load the FTP server up, after its timeout, it will wake itself back up, whereas before the system would completely crash out, which was a big negative for the system. All of those stability issues seem to have been fixed. But there is a little bit of a problem. So one of the challenge that I've encountered so far is I cannot seem to get bash scripts to work properly from the GUI. So to run the bash scripts, I had a folder here to mount and to dismount the FTP server. So what I did here is if you right-click on this folder, I would have the bash option here. When I hit the bash option, it's supposed to run 2 lines of code, and I'm not going to open the file to show the 2 lines of code because it would expose the access to the FTP server on the computer. We're not going to do that. But if I hit the bash, it should run the bash. You can see the bash terminal down here at the bottom. But what should be happening is it should be mounting an FTP drive over here in this folder icon. It never ends up doing that. The only way I can get this to work now is if I come down here and I run with other, and I manually type bash in and select it. Now it loads. So that's kind of a problematic thing because it gives me the extra step to mount and dismount my FTP file directory. So same deal coming over here. The bash does not work despite it should be set up correctly. And I actually deleted and re-enabled the bash. You can see that the FTP directory is supposed to disappear. So if I come down here and I hit the open with other bash, and in this case I actually have to hit run in terminal, it will pop up a terminal window. I will have to enter the password because the dismount requires a umount, which is a sudo script. And of course, this one here doesn't even seem to be doing anything at all. So that seems to be a major problem that was introduced, is I cannot get scripts to bash. Maybe I think I need to run that. So what we should be seeing is the FTP directory should be dismounting. This worked perfectly fine before the update. Now I'm actually getting the bash showing up, but it never asks me for the password, and it should be doing that. It should be giving me a pop-up window. It should be asking me for my password. Once entering the password, it should dismount this FTP directory. And I know the system works because if I come right into here and run this through a terminal command, it works just fine. So if I just go ahead here and bash dismount FTP, it should, of course I spelled the thing wrong. FTP. There you go. Now it's asking me for the password, which it should be doing. It runs, and you can see now the FTP folder disappeared. So I know the script works. That's just the bash no longer works after updating to 5.8.4. And so that really is the only major serious bug that I encountered as far as the updates are concerned. let's see. Oh, one problem. I should have put these in order on my long piece of paper here. When I did the actual upgrade, so if you are running, and I'm not sure if this would apply to every KDE instance or if it's just the Linux Mint KDE. This is Linux Mint 18 KDE. So if you run the update, I actually was not able to shut the computer down. Coming down here, I should hit the leave, hit the shutdown button, and it would shut the computer down. Now, the system actually runs a little slow. This computer is a little slower than I'd like it to be at times, although it seems to be a little quicker after the update. I blame that not on the system. I blame that on the fact that I think the hard drive this is installed in is a 10-year-old hard drive, probably not even a 5400 RPM drive. That's kind of my thought. So I'm not going to blame the slowness on the system. I'm going to blame the slowness probably on the drive. If I threw an SSD in here or even just a modern hard drive, I bet that it'd work a whole lot better than it does, as far as like a whole lot quicker. But there's always a delay. If I had to go and hit the shutdown a couple of times. Now, what I would have done is if you just come into the terminal here and load up a console and just do a sudo shutdown, if I can spell right, H now, that should shut the computer down quite immediately. What I actually did is, since I have KDE installed, KDE actually brings up an alternative desktop environment, and from inside KDE, I can actually shut the computer down as well. And that's what I did, is I booted the computer into KDE, and then I shut it down, and then that enabled me to reload the system. And so once it did shut down, though, that first time, it did reboot back in and shut everything down just fine. So that was kind of a one-time issue. Now, another issue that showed up is my task manager buttons reconfigured themselves. So down here, if you hit the system tray settings, you can adjust your system trays. And what I noticed that had occurred with this is the everything keeps showing up on my extended desktop when I open it. That's kind of one of the things. If anybody knows how to fix that problem, on KDE, anytime I launch something, it seems to throw everything on the far right side of the computer. If anybody knows a fix for that, to throw everything on the far left side of the computer, let me know. I haven't bothered researching that, but I keep these nice icon panels here on the right, and I like them to not be covered up as much as possible. So, but anyway, down here in the system tray, you can configure which items show up. And the one item that kept on showing up was the instant messaging icon. So if I hit the apply, you'll see it pop up down here. And I don't use any of these. The only instant messaging I use is Skype. I hear you can configure it into here. Maybe someday I'll do it, but it's kind of a pain. And I don't use any of the other messaging systems. And so I'm not going to bother with that. So I just wanted that to stop showing up. Also, the KDE Connect now shows up down there. I don't need that because I put a spot for it up here on my sidebar. But you can control what shows up and what doesn't show up inside the panel. It did reset those system tray settings. I did have to come back in and disable instant messaging from that, but that's not a real big deal. Let's see, the login screen is now customizable. It always had a customizable item there, but it didn't actually ever work. I tried customizing that many times. It used to give me a very nice, like a very nice bar there. It had the login, and I would prefer to have changed it, but it wasn't a big deal if it didn't get changed. I wasn't hugely against it. But what I didn't like is the new one. After I updated this, it gave me, basically I logged in and it gives you this giant, enormously ugly blue screen on the startup, and it was actually piercingly blinding. So this is the splash screen. You can pick no splash screen or this one. You might be able to find more, I'm not sure, but I really like the new splash screen. It's just the nice KDE logo, and it looks pretty sweet. I'm trying to remember now where the startup and shutdown, I think. Okay, the login screen. So this is the part here. You can see this huge bright guy right here. This is what it was. Full screen, excessively bright and blinding. I've tried to change this thing before and it didn't actually ever change, but now you can actually come in here and it works. What I did is I came down here and I specified this background image, which is just an image that I had in Arches. And so now I get greeted to this very nice picture in my login screen instead. So that's something that was a nice little welcome thing, is that they did change that, so you can customize it a little bit better. Another frustration I had is your menu icons up here. You still cannot move these guys around. In theory, you can, because there is the option to arrange your icons, and one of these is actually unsorted. But the unsorted option doesn't actually allow us to move them or change them or adjust them in any way. It still puts them in whatever order it wants. I cannot get these main icons in any order that I am actually happy with. I really want home here. I want downloads here. I want trash here. I want share here. Can't do it. If anybody knows how to do that, let me know, please. I'm really interested in getting those guys adjusted around. So that's kind of a little frustration with it. Now, the next part, another very big benefit is Kmail, which I'm not going to open because of all my emails in there. But Kmail actually works properly now in that I always had the emails set to check email on startup, and it never actually checked email on startup. The second problem I encountered is I have custom folders, so it filters emails as they come in like an old traditional Outlook did. And in the new system, the settings, it actually would fail to show me new folder, like new emails going into new folders. So if email comes in, if it's sorted to a folder, it would never show me those unless they went into the folder and left the folder again. Now Kmail actually works properly. It checks emails on startup, and it notifies me as soon as something goes into one of those folders, which is actually now a step above Outlook on my Windows computer, because Windows on Outlook, it only gives me a new email notification if it goes into the main inbox. Kmail now is giving me an indication even if it goes into one of the subfolders. Win for Kmail. It's getting better than Outlook, which is totally awesome. Other little things, Caffeine does seem to work. I haven't fully tested it, but in some initial tests, Caffeine does actually seem to be working. So I've installed Caffeine, and then I've added it to the startup applications. Is it Auto Start? What is it? It's Auto Start is the app here. So when you run Auto Start, you can see that I'm actually running Caffeine on start. I've set this up to boot this up when the computer boots up. So it's always down here in my system tray. And now it does appear that when I come down here and click activate, it does actually appear to activate. So I did some tests setting the screensaver to 1 minute. Caffeine off goes to blacken the screen. Caffeine on did not blacken the screen in the same amount of time. So hopefully that is not a fluke, and hopefully Caffeine is now working, because that is one of the bummers that I had, because when you're on Yahoo View, for example, Caffeine doesn't trigger. If you're on YouTube, then YouTube will prevent the screen from going blank. But Caffeine never worked on KDE, but it does now. And so the next thing is, this is so specific to my business, which you can't actually see because I have my window, my picture in the way. Let me transition that out there. I have this color picker app on the screen. Now this is extremely handy for doing web design stuff where I keep logs of various colors. And I was like, oh man, the bummer about the color picking app was I could pick the colors just fine, but I could never really copy them. They have actually now fixed this. So if I click on a color, I can now go down to here, click on one of these, and it actually now copies them. I'm not sure why that's not loading, opening automatically with, it should be automatically opening with my text editor. In fact, that's something I actually did earlier today, is I already fixed that several times. Maybe it got messed up when I was doing some of the other stuff. Well, the program's Kate that I'm looking for. I don't remember where it's at. Open in Kate, please. Okay, of course it opens way over on the other screen. No, not you. You, thank you. Okay, there we are. So now if I pick up my color picker, I can actually come down here and copy and paste specific colors inside of this platform, which is just, for me, just a very huge win. So this color picker, as far as I'm concerned, is just a huge, huge thing. This is so narrow focus, but as a web designer, I do a lot of UI. I need to make sure colors are matching. That is just a totally awesome, awesome update to that color app. So it makes me wonder how many other apps have they really fixed. So overall, KDE, wow, this update, KDE is totally rocking it now. No more FTP timeouts. It didn't crash the system when the FTP folder was mounted or when the USB drives were mounted. Literally just plugging a flash drive in used to crash my system if I try to unplug it. Overall, stability seems to be, I haven't noticed any stability issues. It does seem to be working a little bit better. Kmail's working better. Color app's working better. All of the other things that I've been working with have been looking better. And once again, just like on my main Linux Mint computer, my videos recording on OBS in HD quality, which is something I've not been able to do for a while. I'm not sure I fully tested that on this particular computer, but it seems to work just fine. So that's kind of, I did my serendipitous update, I did my intentional update, and here's my accidental update. Overall, every Linux system I've just updated works better. I guess the only one that I did do recently that wasn't as good as, I'd updated Fedora. I'm not going to count that though because it was updated on a virtual box. I could not get the guest editions working. But I've heard Fedora 25 is looking pretty good right now, so I don't know. I'm thinking I might give that a try as well. So anyway, I hope that you enjoy yet another update video. KDE on update, totally awesome. Looks great and works great. Oh, you know what? There is one thing I wanted to mention. This does not actually have to do with a KDE update as much as it has to do with a basic package update. And I'm not sure if this is specific to, again, KDE or Linux Mint, but this predated my update. Flash Player plugin seems to break some video feeds on the newer edition. So I haven't fully tested it everywhere. Really the only place I need to use the Flash Player plugin is if I'm watching something on Yahoo View, which is where I stream any programs that I want to watch, because I just don't believe in paying all that kind of stuff. I've disabled ad blocker. They can sell ads to me on it. I have no problem with that. But I found that after the update to the Adobe plugin that happened, I want to say the 14th or 15th, the video player on Yahoo View stopped playing. I'm not sure if that's everywhere. So what I'll do is I'm going to come over here into the Update Manager. And over here, you'll see that it wants to update this. I should actually disable that. But this update here, the 2.16.12.13, so it was the 13th. 12.13.1, Ubuntu 16.04.1. If you install this plugin, your Yahoo View will stop working. So to get this fixed, what I did is I went to the site with the Adobe Flash plugin, and I went down and I found one of the other older versions, and I had to install that on a PPA. And so I installed the PPA and I forced it to go into the latest edition. And then here, whenever this thing checks for updates, I'm just going to go ahead and ignore this until further notice. Because I rolled back to a previous version of Flash Player, and that seems to fix my problem. And eventually, perhaps, I will go back and do a bug report on that. I was thinking about it, but I couldn't verify it on every computer. So here you can see that this is where I just forced the update into a new one. So I went back to the old version was the 12, 13, I went back to the 11.8 version. You can see also down here, maybe. Okay. So this guy here, from this one, from the 10.26 to 11.8, that seemed to work. And I'm looking for the spot where it broke. There should be one more in here. It's not in here. Why is it not showing up? There it is. Okay, so this is actually the when this guy broke. No, this isn't it. That's when it went from the old one to this one. I don't know. Maybe it killed itself from the update history because of when I reinstalled this one. But it was this very day. I noticed this was one of the only plugins that had changed that day. Adding this breaks Yahoo View. So if you do use Yahoo View for your Linux computer and you're finding that it is not working, what it does, it plays the quick intro, it plays the first ad, and then it goes to a blank screen. And if you roll back to this previous version, 1108-1, and I used the one that was plus, what is this, LLI UREX 1. I rolled back to this one following the instructions, just adding this repository in the PPAs, forced it to upgrade to this particular package, and then did a quick test, and Yahoo View works again. So it is definitely an issue with that plugin. Now, this is still the version on Ubuntu, which last time I checked still works. So it's not like a universal thing. But on both of my Linux Mint computers, on this computer here, which is also running Linux Mint, the system still also does not work. I didn't notice it before because I don't use that computer for media. So that's another quick thing there. Overall, is this Pllasma update worth it? Oh, this is so worth it. I mean, they fixed a lot of stability, a lot of bugs. I really like the system. It's really really added some benefit. I did test my one wine application is Warcraft 3. That works just fine. I haven't tested KDE yet. Oh no, maybe I did. I can't remember. I'll give that a test. And actually, I'll report back later in the comments if the little media blipping was solved as well. But anyway, this has been Tom, and I hope that you enjoy switching to Linux.